what it is, yo. That
What
doesn't
it
sound.
is.
I can't get
Oh,
away with
what's
saying that kind of. Yeah,
up?
there you go. There's a song, right? That's where I got that. It gets stuck in your head. Uh, this
That
is
song.
freedom from alcohol. You found the right place. Don't
Yeah.
change the. This is not a channel, but don't stop the podcast.
Yeah.
It is freedom from alcohol, where we help you break up with your bad relationship with alcohol and break up and then keep moving on. Now, you don't have to keep playing footsie with alcohol for the rest of your life because who wants to do that? So my name is Chris Shattuck, Lauren Howman, Matt Gardner, my fellow coaches with me. Hey guys, what's going on?
What
Oh,
it is.
hello. Things are well.
Things
So
good.
what we want to talk about today is, and I got this question from a couple of people on my TikTok the other day about why is it that some people seem to be able to control their drinking while I can't? People say, well, I have one and then it's off to the races. I have to get shit faced, drunk. Well, it seems like other people can sip on their drink and it's no problem for them. So let's dive into this a little bit because there's a lot of different angles that are going on here. And the first thing that I want to say is that alcohol is very, very addictive, highly, highly addictive. It is the second most addictive substance in the whole world, only behind heroin. So a lot of people don't realize how addictive of a substance alcohol is. Because I mean, did you guys know that before you stopped
No.
drinking?
Not to that extent, like I imagined it was, but if you were to tell me it was like in the top two, I would be like, yeah, it's actually pretty shocking to hear.
Yeah.
Right.
And
No, we were all told that it was addictive, but we were not told that it's actually addictive to for everyone.
yeah.
If if it catches you at the right moment, right? So none of us picked up a bottle thinking that we would be the ones that got addicted. We were thinking that everybody else, we were all the exception because very rarely did this happen. I feel like that's how it's marketed to us so that we feel safe doing it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it is, I think, the most deceptive drug out there because, it's legal. You see people doing it. It's, oh, hey, this is normal. All right, I can do this. It makes me feel pretty good. I'm not going to get judged like I would if I was doing some other sort of hard illegal drug or something like that. Even though it's right up in there with how addictive it is. And it's deceptive because it's not like you get hooked right away like other drugs. You don't take a drink of alcohol and all of a sudden, boom, you can't live without it. You kind of dabble, you're fine in your 20s, you puke and rally, all that kind of stuff, maybe even in your early 30s, but at some point it crosses that line and you find yourself where it's like, oh, I can't seem to take it or leave it anymore. I'm finding myself going back to it. It's the only thing I'm really looking forward to, the only thing I'm thinking about. It's wrapped up in my mind constantly. And so that's why it's deceptive, right? Because we don't know when that line is going to get crossed. And it happens for so many people. And I will say that while it does seem probably like people are normal drinkers, I hear that all the time. I wish I could be a normal drinker. First of all, anybody who drinks alcohol, I mean, it's poison, right? So it's not like, ooh, I wish I could be that person because they're ingesting poison. You wouldn't say that if they were drinking cyanide or something else like that. So nothing to be jealous of there. I want to really make sure that we make that point that, you know, if you are a person who can have not one drink because one drink will lead to 25, that's okay. Like that is totally okay because that means that you don't want to put poison into your body. And I have some other thoughts on this that I'll come back around to, but I'm curious to know your guys' take on why some people seem to be able to control alcohol while others just can't.
I mean, I'll speak from my personal experience. Like for me, I was even thinking as we were kind of getting going with this, like what was it for me? So I know for sure just the mechanics of eating and drinking. I've always been, I guess, made fun of, and rightfully so to a degree, for like how quickly I eat and drink. My brother's always like to this day, he's like, man, it's like your last meal. Like you just finish like three times quicker than anybody. Even when I'm trying to mindfully eat or drink, especially drinking, man, like it'll just be down the hatch. So that was like me, like from a kid before I even got into alcohol. So there was just this. So I think there's like the degree of the mechanics, the velocity of which I drink, definitely sped up because like it was just boom down the hatch. What's the next? What's next? Next one, right? So that definitely set me up to, and then just the which I've gone through. Anybody listening for the first time, very shy kid. had a hard time in social situations. So alcohol was like oh, okay, now I can do this, right? So combining that with the actual like physicality of me slamming drinks, regardless if it's water or beer or like a 50-50 rum drink. I've always just done that. So, and then couple that with the addiction part and just the fact that it's where I'm from, like in northern British Columbia, Canada, it was like that was the thing to do, child in the 90s. So like that was like, even when I got to work for the first time, it was like cool to be hungover at work and like puking. And it was like a sign of like, a badge of honor, like a man, it's like manly, right? So
Oh
all these
yeah.
things that showed up and just even the advertising, I always thought it was like it was a cool thing. I became a musician, right? So then obviously that was the rock and roll lifestyle was cool to be like reckless and all that sort of thing. So all of that put together really may be susceptible to just, like last week's podcast, romanticize it and then just really get addicted to it. So, but I was just thinking literally like in the moment, I'm like, man, I've always just drank really quickly. So I don't think that that kind of gave me a leg up on the situation as far as like speeding myself into being one of those people that could not just have one.
Oh yeah, yeah, I was the same. I mean, I would crush vodka and sodas like three in an hour. They would go
Right?
down like water, and my wife
Yeah.
was like, "Holy shit, what the hell?" Yeah,
Yeah.
go big
Yeah.
or go home was always kind of my
Right?
thing, and
Yeah.
it was never enough. And obviously, the more you drink, the more you have to drink to get
Slam
to that point.
Yeah.
Uh,
you just took a big sip, and I'm like, slam it,
Yeah.
slam
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I
yeah,
Go
should
ahead
chug,
and
have
chug
chug.
it. Let's go.
behave now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could finish a whole bottle of Merlot in an hour flat, and that stuff is like, it's strong. It doesn't go down easy. It bites. It's like that's addiction. That's not because I like the taste of it, right? But I
Right.
remember being at a bar one night and I knew I had to leave soon. And so I'm like, can I get one more? And she's like, yeah, yeah. So she brings it over and I slam it. And she's like, damn. I'm like, I know. See you later. I, I was going to get that. And that speaks to the whole attitude and mindset about a person with an alcohol problem is that I wanted just that much more to like, what, get me home because I was being cut off because we were leaving. So I'm like, let me have another one. And that stuff's not good to chug. It's not delicious. It doesn't feel like, it feels like death, honestly. It's very dry. Anyway, so I actually am the same way, but I've never thought about the mechanics of drinking and eating. I'm a very slow eater because I talk too much, but I drink really quickly. If I pick up a bottle of water, it's gone. And then I'm just
Right.
throwing it away. I'm not carrying it around all day like other people do. But anyway, all right. So, um, like you were saying earlier, Chris, where how alcohol is so insidious. The reason we all picked up alcohol in the first place is because we were not told that it was not modeled as something that was so dangerous, which it is. It's number two, right? So, but what's the message behind heroin? I grew up with this is your brain on drugs, like that egg that's like, was it
Yep.
an egg in a frying pan or something?
Egg.
Yep.
This is
Yep.
your
Yep.
brain, this is your brain on drugs. And those drugs were coke, crack, heroin. And so the messaging that I had in my head that I've had forever, and I think it's true for a lot of them, is if you do it once, you can be automatically addicted for the rest of your life. And so, of course, I stayed away because who would want to be a crackhead? Who would want to volunteer to have a heroin problem? Alcohol, we're told, as long as we're responsible with it, then we won't have a problem, which is false, false, false,
Mhm.
false. So I just wanted to point that out. I don't think it can be said enough that our advertising and our marketing and the propaganda for alcohol to keep it going, even though we know it's poison and that it is killing a whole lot of people, is that we just don't see it as being this addictive drug. So I wrote down a little analogy for how I see addiction and how you start off over here as that casual drinker, maybe a binge drinker in your teens and 20s, moving along into this person where all of a sudden you can't say no to it and you find yourself stopping at the store even though you promised you weren't going to drink and you just can't go without it now and you're realizing that. I feel like the equation, and I did write it down for you guys, is exposure, frequency, and time equals the addiction slope. And Alan Carr does a beautiful job of talking about like a pitcher plant in his book, The Easy Way to Quit Drinking, where he talks about a slippery slope. This plant is a meat eating plant or flower or something. And the fly will go in and it'll go after the nectar or the honey or whatever it is that they're going to eat. And as they're going down into the plant, they're not realizing there's no way out. They're getting sticky, or the slope is too whatever. I can't remember what the ordeal was, but they didn't realize that as they're walking towards that prize that they were going to get, they were also going into the bottom of a plant that they couldn't get out of, and they were going to get eaten. And he uses that analogy really beautifully for drinking. But another one that I like is Russian roulette. And when you think about exposure, frequency, and time, who is going to end up being a victim of a gunshot wound if we play Russian roulette? It's the person who spends more exposure with that gun. They play the game more frequently. And then over time, what's the odds that they're going to end up being injured by a gun, right? With Russian roulette. The same thing is true with alcohol. So if you've got that person who's like, oh yeah, I barely ever drink, or like, the addict is looking at the person saying, gosh, how can they just take it or leave it? Well, how much are they exposing themselves? Maybe this is the only beer they've had this year, right? Or maybe they only drink like a bottle of wine on a special occasion, or they only have champagne and that's it at a wedding. So they barely drink, so they don't have exposure. They're not doing the frequency, and they're not doing it all the time and over time. I feel like that's the only difference, because if we continue to do it, we continue to go down that slope that we're not aware of. And then suddenly one day we find out that we're at the bottom of the plant, we can't get out, and we actually feel like we need the alcohol and we can't say no to it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I love that description. And it's kind of like you talk about the pickle and the cucumber thing too. That's what I'm thinking of, right?
Same
Because once
thing, damn it.
once we become to that the pickle, we can't go back and be a cucumber, So and and it's okay. That's for a long time I struggled with that going, don't tell me I'm a pickle when I want to be a cucumber. Damn it, if I want to be a cucumber, I'm going to do it. But when you realize, like, accept that, no, I'm a pickle. I've gotten past the point where alcohol, the dopamine rush, all that stuff is in my brain. And if I go back to it, I'm going to end up being right back where I was. And I worked too damn hard to get the hell into a pickle. So no, I'm good with
Right.
being that. And I think people fight that. I know I did that whole philosophy behind, like, well, not me. Um, so it's okay, right? That acceptance part of it. And I just really think too why some people get addicted to it and other people don't is like that this dopamine rush that we get from alcohol is just our choice of dopamine rush that we get. It's the same reason why some people can go and buy a lottery ticket when the Mega Millions is up to $1 billion or whatever, or the Powerball. They buy maybe a few tickets and they lose and they stop. Like, it's no big deal. While other people are stopping at every gas station along the way home, buying scratch off tickets, buying lottery tickets, playing them, going to the casino constantly. That's their dopamine rush, right? It's the person who can't just have a little bit of cake, but they want to eat the whole cake or a whole bag of chips. That's their dopamine rush. And for those of us that alcohol was what worked for us for whatever the reason that we fell into it, that's our go-to. That's our solution. And that's why we keep going back to it, but it's not everybody's solution. And I will say, by the way, that a lot of the people that we may think are quote unquote normal drinkers or have it under control, they might not. It's just that they're not showing it. They're, it's not something that people openly talk about. Like, hey, I got a problem with alcohol. It's there's many people that do suffer in silence and that do have a problem with it, and you just may not know it. Like, I think the statistic was 80% of the Western world drinks, and 80% of those people are technically they have a problem with it. If you look at, like, okay, here's the standard amount of drinks or whatever that is recommended, which, by the way, is now none, isn't it? Don't they say
Yeah.
now? They used to say
Yeah.
two for a guy and one for a woman, but now they're like, nope, none of it is good, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
that's right. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
pretty recent, but yeah, zero.
yeah, yeah.
Good
And
tech.
I want to add something on to the dopamine discussion, because the exposure frequency time equals addiction slope that I'm talking about, that I just purely made up. Please don't go and tell all your friends, or do, I don't care. That goes with dopamine as well. So it's the dopamine addiction slope too, because I don't know if you guys ever, towards the end of your drinking, did you ever realize that when you would take that first sip, you would just like melt, relax, feel like a new person? Like, I could feel the dopamine coursing through my veins. Um,
Hmm.
and I knew it was a problem right then. And it was still a long time before I quit, but I was like, oh shit, there's something about this that's not supposed to feel like that.
mhm.
And
Hmm.
I've never heard anybody talk about it that way. But the dopamine follows this same process. So if I buy one ticket one time for the Mega Millions and I don't win, I didn't get a whole lot of dopamine from that, right? But let's say I bought one ticket for the Mega Millions and I won $50. Well, for me, with my, I'm going to say it, and I don't know if anybody else agrees with it, but I am addicted to dopamine. So I don't think I have an addictive personality, but I have ADHD. I don't have enough dopamine on my own. We're a lot like that, especially drinkers. You deplete your own natural ability to make dopamine. Sorry, I'm going on a tangent here. But um, so what we do is, so you win the $50 on the Mega Millions ticket and you're like, cool, let me go reinvest this. That's me, because now this is free money. It's not even mine. And I go and buy
Yeah.
50 tickets and I only get $20 back out of it. I go spend 20 and now I make 80. That dopamine's going all over the damn place. I'm getting excited because every time I'm doing something, I may have lost, but now I've got 20 bucks. It's still free money. I can go spend it again. And now I'm creating a cycle where I'm getting dopamine hits based on numbers. People do it with shopping, people do it with sex, they do it with porn, they do it with, you can do it with anything. You can do it with video games.
Yep.
But
Yep.
the amount of times you're going to expose yourself to the experience of gambling or the experience of getting those hits of dopamine from compulsive shopping is going to tell you, and you're going to notice, am I doing it more frequently? Am I spending more time thinking about it, more time doing this? Am I exposing myself to that, like, because you don't know if you're going to win. Every time you spin the machine, you don't know if you're going to hit a huge jackpot for a quarter or if it's going to be, you lose 50 bucks while you're playing a quarter at a time. So not knowing when the dopamine's going to hit is also another thing that draws people to keep going, keep going, keep going. And so that's how you can find people addicted to gambling. And you're like, how did that happen? But it's very similar to how it would work for a porn addiction, a shopping addiction, alcohol addiction. And so when you're at the end of your line with alcohol and you're like, how come I can't just leave it behind? Well, now you're dependent on the dopamine as well. Your body's used to getting these chemicals, but you've also been giving yourself this dopamine with alcohol that you're no longer making on your own. The normal things that used to provide dopamine for you provide nothing anymore in comparison to the big rush of dopamine you get from alcohol. Anyway, all that to say, I wanted to tie in the dopamine for this more sciencey aspect of it because it really ties really well into that too. So sorry,
Yeah.
guys.
No, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, the dopamine rush even a lot of times comes in anticipation of that drink, in anticipation of what's going to happen when I spin the wheel or play blackjack or hit the slot machine button. And like you're talking about there, right? It all ties into it. And as a society, we are we have been flooded with like dopamine in whether it's scrolling through our phone, constant, so everything's at our fingertips now. And so we're always constantly craving. Every single one of us is looking for that dopamine rush because we've gotten way too much of it flooded into our system. And this is part of the reason why when we stop drinking, we go from a really big high to a crash like that because that dopamine is no longer there and it sucks. We have this big void of dopamine that we used to getting flooded with, and it takes a while to level out. And even after you've been alcohol free for a while, it's still there's part of our brain that still craves that massive flood, that massive high from it. And if we don't find things that hit it close enough, that's why it brings people back to it a lot of the time. So I mean, there's a whole sort
Hold
of
on.
stuff that we could go down that rabbit hole with. But yeah, I mean, it's just it really is interesting. So whether it is gambling or obviously drinking, if you're listening to this podcast, if it's eating, if it's shopping, whatever the addiction is, that's what's going on. And just like the person down the street doesn't have a shopping addiction and you may, same thing with alcohol, right? It's just that's the choice, that's the thing that you found that gave you the dopamine that you were looking for, that soothed whatever it is that you were doing. And it's what people use to fit in with other people. We are by nature want to be part of a tribe. And so alcohol is what has been shown to us that glues people together. And so it feels unnatural to not want to be a part of a tribe. And so when we say, well, I want to quit drinking, it's like, well, why are you going away from the tribe? It's this whole thing that we have to battle with our old historic brains. And again, there's a lot more to it, but hopefully this helps you understand. First of all, again, going back to the beginning, if somebody seems like they're a normal drinker, that's okay that you're not a normal quote unquote drinker. You're just not putting poison in your body. Be proud of that. Be okay with the fact that your body doesn't want poison anymore and you can't do it. There's nothing wrong with that. And if you keep that mentality and hopefully this listening to this makes it a little bit more clear, like there's nothing wrong with you because you have one and then it's off to the races. That's how each one of us were, right? That's how we got to where we are now.
Yeah.
So
It's
it's
what the
just
drug was designed to do. It's just not what you were told about it.
Right.
exactly.
So the drug
Exactly.
is successful in Chris, Lauren, Matt. At least it used to be.
Yep.
Um,
That's right.
yeah,
Past tense.
it's just that we're being lied to about it. So,
Yep. Yeah, and just to wrap it up real quick, kind of going back to the whole drugs are bad, drugs are bad. This is your brain on drugs. When we were a kid, sure, yeah, we get that message pounded in. It's pretty clear. I'm not going to go touch that. But alcohol, that's fine in moderation. And we see our parents doing it. We see their friends doing it. Again, the glue that holds everybody together. That's where the messaging in our brain is all whack. And part of what we help with clients with in our program is changing that programming that's been in there since birth, since you saw your parents doing it, since you saw their friends doing it, and taking out the program that you're not going to fit in with part of the tribe. All that shit is running in your back in the background of your brain. And if you're not aware of that, it's frustrating as shit to go, why? I know consciously I shouldn't drink, but I keep going back to it. So, with hypnosis, with reprogramming subconscious programs that are going on in your brain, that is one of the big elements that we help people with. And if you're listening to this going, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, I want to know more about that, click the link below, go to coachedbychris.com, set up a consultation. You can see past clients that we work with and hear from them and read the reviews. If you Google Chris Shattuck coaching, you're not going to be like, how the hell do I spell that? Just go to the website. You'll see the Google reviews. Because I try to tell people how to spell or pronounce my last name is is not. Although I will say it rhymes with addict. So just if you always remember it that way,
oh
there you go.
Lord,
There we go.
dang.
All right, guys.
Chris, I always have to look at you online if I'm going to spell your name out because I'm not sure if I spelled it correctly in my phone. So I have to go to Facebook and make sure I did it right every time
Yeah.
I'm putting your name on something. It's so funny.
Well, what's really funny is, when we get groceries or something, they abbreviate. They only put the first four letters of our last name, so it's always Shat. So it's
Ah,
like,
yeah.
You
order
sure
for
did.
Shat.
Order for Shat.
I
Yeah.
just get a kick out of that every damn time. So yeah. All right. That's good. I think that's a good place to end right there. What do you guys
I
say?
think it's good.
All right. All right. Thank you guys so
Ah,
much for listening. Again, subscribe, like, leave a comment, all that stuff. Share this with somebody who needs it. And we will catch you next week for another episode of Freedom from Alcohol.
thanks, everybody.
Bye.